I will open the City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 20th, 2018 for the Beaumont City Council. We will open with closed session at 5 p.m. Could I have a call to order, please?
Councilmember Santos?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Here.
Mayor Carroll?
Here. I am assuming we have no public comments?
I don't have any requests.
All right, thank you very much. City Attorney, could you please read the items for discussion?
So council's meeting in closed session. Item number 2 is conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, AC Equipment Incorporated et al. Versus City of Beaumont et al. Case number RIC 1714429. And item 3, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957D1, employee title City Manager. And I believe that's it. That's
Thank
all.
you. I'm sorry, were you all set? All right, with that, I will adjourn to closed session at 5:01 p.m.
She's gone. She's gone. Makes you wonder who's next. Bob's. So there was something going on. Because, but Amir came in later. I don't know. Well, we'll never know.
Just so you know, she said.
Somebody that we paid it. Maintain it. Take care of it. Someday they'll hire their own people.
Yeah.
They're not.
So something about the contract with them, and he recused himself because his firm, somebody in his firm represents that company.
Okay, so the point of contact for spot the craft fair is Heather in the back.
Oh, good.
So,
I'll ask her.
yeah.
Okay, good.
There's no water here.
Uh-oh, they didn't leave us water. Does
Heather
have
has
in
it.
the back?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I forgot my minutes. Let me go grab them.
I just forgot your name. You go.
There's need in me. It says consumers should throw away any remaining in retail.
When I used it all up.
Should throw it away. Ate it.
I ate it.
Oh. Stock market slide is flashing. What's it drop down? Closed on Tuesday, 2,640. I haven't read that. That's
1.8%.
oil dropped by 6.8.
Pick up those bags and check
Okay.
something.
Okay.
And then Heather said if I come by the, what's that center, the community center, whatever, she said she has all the people.
That's the one out.
Cherry,
Valley?
yeah, Oak Valley and Cherry Street.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go with me. You know I don't go anywhere alone.
Sure.
We would drag my grandson to the store. I forgot all about him, and I coming up this week, and I told him he could come stay with me, so my son brought him out yesterday, so.
What can you say? If my kids, grandkids. Yeah. And I know, you know, they don't like things like that. Oh, Granny, she's always home.
Yeah. So that's why I said, well, I have council Tuesday, are you okay with that? Yeah, but I thought, I hate to leave them all 2 weeks in a row after he's been out, so.
Yeah. That's
So
okay.
what do you watch?
Watched
Crazy
Crazy.
Ex-Girl? Okay, well, that I can catch up.
I didn't realize that she writes,
Oh, yeah.
and she is crazy.
Yeah, she's crazy. I saw her on live with Kelly and Ryan
Uh-huh.
a while ago. This is in the summer. And she was talking about that. Yeah, she does. She writes it. And she's very energetic and bubbly, like in person.
Yeah,
talking
like
on the
she,
talk show. Yeah.
it's funny because it was funny. I mean, it's always funny.
Yeah.
She just doesn't let that one just freaking. It's crazy.
It's like, nobody's that crazy. Nobody's that stupid.
Oh my God.
But she is.
I looked over at Ursula and I said, if you had a friend like that, you'd have to move out of the country to get away from her.
Yeah, really.
She won't leave that gal alone.
No, I know that her poor friend.
Yeah, watch the first
Yeah,
episode.
I did watch the first one. That's the only one I
Oh,
haven't
okay,
seen
so,
that.
so that's
that
where
season.
she's
Yeah.
going to law school.
Oh, no, actually, I missed it.
I think this is the first one in the second season, where she, I think,
Maybe I did.
wait a
but I
minute,
just don't
maybe,
think.
maybe that, we watched 3 shows.
Okay, maybe it's the beginning of the
Maybe it's the
second.
second one.
Yeah. So Nicole.
I know, that's what somebody put, you better check.
December 18th.
At, what did you say, 4 o'clock before the closed session?
Either 4 or 4:30.
Okay.
What day is it?
December 18th.
So it's a regular council meeting, it'll just be
Yeah.
done beforehand.
Yeah. So,
And if we're not,
we're not required to be here.
it doesn't matter if we're here.
For you.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I'll come. Well, I will come in.
Okay.
But it will go, it'll be that part and the swearing in, and then they go into closed session.
Okay, so then I could leave. And
Oh.
then he could stay for that council meeting and he'd be already sworn in. So that's good. Okay, that's good. Well, I thought it would only be, it would be nice if I was there. And he's the new one.
Right.
Leaving, so that works.
Well, at least, yeah, you have someone coming in.
They're gonna swear in an empty chair
Pass
for
this
you.
on to. Well, I don't
Hand
know,
off.
have you gotten any applications?
We just posted it like today,
today.
or actually after
saw-
tonight's
Okay,
meeting.
yeah,
It'll be.
I saw that, yeah, so. Well, I think it's probably easier for people to apply to be appointed than to run.
There's less to do.
I think yesterday.
People
It
could
takes a lot of time and energy to run.
Because I've just done
I can't do all that,
75.
you know, all the reporting.
See, and that's like, I said, it'll look just like a form.
When you have to meet with people, they'll come in and say, will you come and talk to my group? and what-
I heard so many complaints about, people
It's
buying
much easier if you're appointed.
Not as a homebody.
Yeah, I don't like to run out of the house, I just don't. I like to
Me too.
give my, I know.
I'm getting more that way, but
See, when I went to work, getting up and out.
I'll give it to you, throw the people that stole the money in prison.
Yeah.
I just
When I
hated
heal,
it.
get rid of your lawyers and consultants, that's how you pay your pension.
On Sunday.
Stop pillaging the money, you freaks. That's how you pay your pension, this ain't no rocket science, they budgeted for that pension, and then they didn't pay it in.
You don't want to.
They just have good marriage, just
When I
like you,
first
just
retired,
like
I
all
didn't
over
get
the
out of my
country.
pajamas. I just hung around the house in my pajamas. My friends are like, Donna, you need to get dressed and get out. It's like, no, I don't want to. I'm perfectly
you.
fine.
Right.
I'm watching TV from bed, eating my cereal and
you can't have cereal.
not anymore, I can't, but I used to. So my older son, he's 6'5", and he's a really skinny. Well, he's 47.
I don't see it. They said they were gonna release it at 5.
He stopped eating his wife's cooking, and she's a good cook, but she cooks with a lot of oil and rice and almost everything. Everything's fried and greasy.
Oh, that's, yeah, they haven't written it up
But,
since,
you know, there's bacon and everything, which isn't
Oh,
bad,
that's
but
Actually, we
Yeah,
know
yeah,
bacon is good.
it's everything else that goes with it. You know, lots of
oh, but the.
Yeah, you can.
all that
Yeah.
stuff, you know. So anyway, he said, Micaiah's not cooking anymore. He said, so I'm eating these green cuisines or healthy choice dinners at night. And he takes one for lunch.
Sodium in those though, right?
So he doesn't have high blood pressure, so I don't care. So
You know, we.
he has, I guess he has one for lunch, he has one for dinner, and he does, he's not picking between meals. That's it. He's lost 20 pounds in a month.
It looks like,
in a month.
Put stuff
Right.
away.
I thought he was on a video.
No, that's the other
That's
son.
the other son.
He's lost about 30 from the pain.
I won't
And
say
he's
wow.
built more like me. He's a little bit he's shorter than his brother. So he's-
But we're all
that'd be bad.
But at
Hence
least
the
there's
long
hope.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one month dropped it like this. So he doesn't have that big pot belly anymore. He looks good. He came by yesterday and I said, you're getting skinny. He said, I told you I lost 100 pounds. I said, I read about you. So, good for you. His father is like, he was 5'11". He had to be 204.
Oh,
And he said,
that's the one.
that's too much. I said, I understand his weight. So in the morning, he always had a piece of cake or donut, something sweet with his coffee. Every day. And then he ate ice cream during the day because he worked for him. He loved ice cream.
They don't wanna do that.
So he stopped eating the cake with his coffee. In a week, he lost 10 pounds.
Oh, no.
I gained 10 pounds. It's a man thing. So all he did was cut out that piece of cake or donut in the morning. In 1 week, he lost 10 pounds. It was 190. I think he got down to like 190, and then he stayed there, never gained it back, never got heavier.
I've been meaning to send you a video of one of Dr. Berg's. He says, if you can't stick to the diet 100%, do this,
Yeah,
not this.
good. Send me
So
that
I
one.
need to send you that
Yes,
because
that's me.
he really tells you why.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you know,
why
it
we should do
would
this
help.
and that. I'm doing pretty good. I mean, I
No, I
eliminated
know
a lot
you
of stuff, but I don't follow it as strictly as you
Yeah,
do,
and
so.
when you go out.
Yeah, I do, and I go out at least once a week, probably
So
twice
this
a
will
week
help
to
you.
eat. Yeah, so that's- but I am staying away from bread and pasta and stuff like that.
My grandma's doing it. She swears that she's not lactose intolerant anymore.
Who is that?
My grandmother.
Sharon said some of her problems that she was having were cleared up.
Yeah.
My husband, I told you he
That's how you do
did an
it.
inhaler.
So I solved your problem. Take your.
Yeah,
They don't listen to
last
me.
year, Christmas,
But I
he was
solved the
coughing, coughing, coughing.
Yeah.
I go, you have got to go to the doctor and get her to increase your medicine. In March, we went on the diet, and he said after 2 weeks, he stopped taking his inhaler. And then he told me, just out of the blue, he's like, oh, I stopped taking my inhaler. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, I don't need it. And he hasn't taken it since then. It's been like since
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, and I don't have any brain fog. He wasn't even trying to.
Right.
He was only on it because I cooked, and that's all
Because
he
he
had.
eats Chinese.
So he's lost like over 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And he's like, now he's a firm believer, you know. He thinks it's the greatest thing ever happened.
I just wish I could like have someone just come in and like just take everything out of my fridge and
Yeah.
everything out of my
Get rid of
pantry
everything you're not
and then
supposed to
fill
have.
it with what I need.
And then do that. Yeah.
Right. It'd be much easier.
Oh,
But
well, and when you have kids, it's harder.
Well, you know who does really good on this, Carrie Patterson. She's on the keto diet, and she does all the cooking on the weekend. She sticks to it strict, I think.
oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
she's,
no, it's helped me, I know that, no doubt about it.
Cook either.
well,
so.
here's what,
Not anymore.
because I'm going through the training on how to
Mhm.
coach people on keto.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, let's see, if I made $645.
Come over and come redo my fridge for me.
So
There you
I
go.
could, probably.
We'll see. There
So
you go.
I'm waiting to first get through all
Right,
these
oh,
videos
totally.
and feel like I can really do it.
Mhm.
I found out I've had 7 eye operations. All my eye problems were from my diet. The erosions I have in my eyes is called corneal dystrophy. It's caused from the sugar. Most everything's caused from the
Yeah.
sugar. And the cataracts. We all, most
Yeah, I have them.
That's why we have them.
Yeah.
It's caused from the sugar. And he explains how, why. You know. Both cancers I had thyroid cancer, breast cancer, caused from my diet. What else do I have? Well, of course, I have high cholesterol. We'll see if that goes down.
Yeah.
We only make that one every 6 months.
Yeah.
So.
And I have the one with 30 days within my surgery date to have my blood test.
But I know, I can tell you that I'm sleeping now.
Yeah,
And
she
for like
wasn't before.
11 or 12 years, I've been taking sleeping pills and Ambien. I cannot sleep. I'm like a zombie. Yeah, I'm living on the diet. I know why now. Because it tells you what.
Just about.
It tells you what happens to
You
your
have to have
body.
your hormones. You have to have the right amount of calcium, and magnesium. Most people don't eat salad, which is where you get most of your potassium. He says 7 to 10 cups of vegetables daily. If you can't get, and most women, I'm 7, you know, women are on those. So if you can't get enough, I drink this electrolyte powder, because it gives you like another 1,000 milligrams of potassium.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, but that's why people aren't sleeping a lot of their
Oh, I
diet.
believe it. I believe it.
And we take that calm at night. It's called CALM. It's magnesium.
Mm.
It also has melatonin and
Mhm.
something called GABA. All of it is good for sleep. That helps. Get on that magnesium. But it's all.
Because there's so much
Fibromyalgia, arthritis.
Pete was gonna do it himself, but he's such a he really knows how to do it. Oh, he's the attorney? Oh, yeah.
So that's why I want to do this, because
it's how we
see
should
so
eat.
many
You know what I mean?
so unhealthy. Where we live, people have so many.
That's food, because it's there in front of you, in front of your face. You know what I mean?
That was what's killing us.
There's so many bad things in the foods, of course, we're not street.
Hi, ladies.
Ready for clients?
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Will be your first client.
Okay. Yeah, I have all the recipes and shopping lists. I can tell you
I just
exactly
need
what.
like a, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, get rid of all of this and
Actually, my son is starting to do ground. So he's in. Chicken nuggets.
Because like some stuff like the other day. It's so good when you smell it. So yummy. So those are like. She's real. I got her to buy my cake. She did.
and I don't like all this apples in the green.
I should bring her.
Through all that stuff through the planning commission and
You don't think.
don't they know in time, you know? Oh, yeah, I know that's what it came down
That's right. Todd
So you.
We are coming out of closed session. Could I please have a report from the city attorney?
Yes, the council met in closed session. Item 2, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, AC Equipment Incorporated et al. Versus City of Beaumont et al., case number RIC 1714429. No reportable action was taken this evening. Item number 3, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, employee title city manager, and there was no reportable act on that item either.
Thank you very much. I will call to order the Beaumont City Council for the regular session at 6:15 p.m. We have closed the closed session. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Santos?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Here.
Mayor Carroll?
Here. Thank you. We're going to have a pledge of allegiance now. I would like, Chief, would you do the pledge for us? I would very much appreciate it. Thank you. I would, if we could stand, please, I would like to have a moment of silence before we proceed with the meeting. We have lost 2 officers. We lost, not in Beaumont, but we all stand together on this issue. We lost Sergeant Ron Heelis from the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. He had end of watch on 11/8/2018, and he was in the Thousand Oaks shooting. And we have lost Motor Officer Toshio Harai. He is of the Gardena Police Department, and his end of watch was 11/15/2018. So if we could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. We are opening up now public comments for items that are not on the agenda. Any one person may address the City Council on any matter not on this agenda. If you wish to speak, please fill out a public comment form provided at the back table and give it to the City Clerk. There is a 3-minute time limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the council from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments. Do we have public comments? I will open public comment at 6:18 p.m.
First speaker is Jeff Shepard.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeff Shepard. I'm a Beaumont resident, but here tonight I'm representing Ramona Humane Society. About a year and a half ago, you guys tasked us with to help with the problem of feral cats in our community. It's taken me a little while to work this out, but we did receive a grant that is in collaboration with Ramona Humane Society and the City of Beaumont. It's for $6,000. It's a beginner's grant. It's through Maddie's Fund. And what this is going to allow us to do is spay and neuter 117 animals from Beaumont for free of charge for the residents. So this could be used for feral cats and for community cats, just roaming the area. I've already discussed this with Animal Control. We're ready to launch. We've sent out flyers. I've bought you guys all a copy of the flyer. And I've also enclosed our brochure that we've done on free roaming cats and how to help take care of them and control them. Also, in here, I did our stats. I thought you guys would like to see your stats for the first 3 quarters of this year. And right now, Beaumont is fantastic. We're running a 92% live release rate. So I just wanted to make sure that I followed up with you guys and we did what we said we would do. And if you guys ever need me to do like a workshop with you on feral cats, community cats, microchips, I'm always available.
Thank you for your comments. Much appreciated.
Next speaker is Ann Connors.
Elm. When I was last here, I gave you information and even pictures to advise you of the danger I'm in because I cannot see the traffic in the street as I exit my property. I also let you know that numerous elementary school children are endangered by having to go into the street undetected to pass the same blockage. In that information, you were informed of all my previous efforts to address the situation with my neighbor and city employees. In response to my October visit here, a police officer pointed out to me during a conversation on this topic that if I am struck exiting my driveway, I will be held liable for exiting in an unsafe manner. There is no other way to exit. That is what I'm trying to tell you. The officer, by saying this, admitted that he saw the problem for himself when he arrived at my house. You are going to discuss this evening the topic of signs blocking the view of traffic as though any other blockage is not a problem. If you can require signs be a certain distance behind the property line, you can require that all objects be below the property line and out of the sight line for traffic. The state, in a rare moment of lucidity, passed into law Assembly Bill 2363 to stop the endless raising of speed limits on residential streets as cities grow. You can now drop your plan to raise hours for a second time. You can even lower it back to 25. The faster the traffic, the more danger to me, the kids, everyone. All you do by raising the limit is reward those who broke the limit that you had. In reality, we should be given sidewalks as a collector road, but I understand the problems you would have with that at this time. However, taking care of the speed limit and the blockage will not cause undue financial difficulty for the city. It is physically very difficult for me to come here, as you can see. I hope it won't be necessary to return and that you will do the right thing and ensure my safety and that of those children by removing this blockage of the traffic sight line. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Last speaker is Libby Yermovic.
About 2 months ago, I requested a copy of the Melrose taxes that you charge to the citizens. I did not receive it. I got an email from your finance director, Milana Taylor, saying she didn't even look at it. She doesn't have a copy. Can somebody get me a copy of the taxes that some of your staff should have approved, that you should have approved, that for some reason nobody wants to turn over? And on another note, there were 80 people and still 180 murdered and still 100 missing out of Paradise, California. People were died in their cars because they couldn't get out, because there was no roads built. And I'm sure there was mitigation fees collected for things like safety and awareness, but the money was just embezzled and the people died. Government corruption's an ugly rolling error. It doesn't get better. The fact that you 2 of 5 have escalated it doesn't make it any better. But eventually it'll keep up for it to you. Would you be proud if you killed 100 people? Would that finally slap it into you? That you have to build fire stations, you have to build roads? You stood up to talk for cops? You stood up for your own citizens? Would you ever do that?
Do we have any more public comments?
No other speakers.
All right, thank you very much. I will close public comment at 6:24 p.m. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Are there any items that council would like to pull from the consent calendar, or do we have public comments on any items?
I don't have any requests
All
to
right,
speak.
thank you. We good? With that, do I have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Carroll.
Yes. Thank you. Action items. Action item number 8 is to approve amendment number 2 to professional services agreement with CR&R Incorporated of Paris, California for street sweeping services in the amount of $104,623.23 for calendar year 2019. We have a staff report from AFTAB.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and council members. A comprehensive street sweeping program assists the city in complying with the requirements of National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits by removing pollutants, debris, and sediments on the city streets that otherwise will end up in the waterways, lakes, and rivers. City currently has a street sweeping contract with CR&R. The contract was originally awarded in December of 2016, and we had the first amendment last year. The staff report here is to amend the agreement for another year. That agreement will be expiring on December 20th. The other thing is there's an increase of $327.26 per month. That is due to the consumer index that is of Bureau of Labor and Statistics CPI index with increase of 3.9% for the year 2016 to 17. That's the adjustment for CPI. So including that, the new cost for services will be $8,718.60 per month. So far, they have so up to date, they have removed 358 tons of debris from our streets. Otherwise, that would have been going to storm drains and stuff. So the staff recommends to approve the second amendment to professional services agreement with CR&R Incorporated of Paris, California for street sweeping services in the amount of $104,623.23 for calendar year 2019. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not.
All right, thank you. I'll open it up to any questions from council.
I got a couple.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
It says in paragraph 2 that there is a increase in service frequency to the commercial areas. Does that mean that they were going out more frequently? And if so, is that a part of the rate or?
It may be due to increased service areas, new businesses coming.
Okay, but is that part of their contract?
Right.
Or are they giving us an additional hourly charge for those new areas?
No, so it's the rate is per curb mile.
Okay.
So that's all adjusted into it.
Okay, so with the new construction coming in, it's still covered under the curb?
Right, right.
Okay. All right. That's
And we get monthly report from them, how many curb miles and the tonnage data that is required for them to be submitted to us.
And we've been satisfied with the performance and the.
Right. I mean, there's always improvement to services.
Okay.
Thank you. And
Do you get I'm sorry.
the Councilmember Lar?
Do they provide you with a map of the areas that they've done?
No, we have a map that was included with the original services when we send the RFP. That's not required what they clean every month.
Okay, and with the curb mileage, do they tell us where they've been? The reason I ask is I've seen them out a couple times. Looks like they do the same street over again. and they don't hit other streets. And so I'd like to just try to make sure that if there's a way to follow up to make sure that they're actually hitting the entire city.
Right. And we can certainly do that. We can have a pilot car that can follow, or we can do, spot checks.
Okay. I
That's
think spot checks would be fine. Just
right.
want to make sure that they're covering the area they're supposed to.
Right. We can put a pile somewhere and then,
Booby trap.
right.
You can follow them around in your car after. Thank you.
On the reports, those come from the dump site, correct?
Right. Right.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Good question. Do we have any other? If there are no, do you have questions, council member? Okay. I will make a motion to approve amendment number 2 to professional services agreement with CR&R Incorporated of Paris, California for street sweeping services in the amount of $104,623.23 for calendar year 2019.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes, thank you. Item 9, San Gorgonio Village Specific Plan, Conditions of Approval and Compliance Agreement. Mr. Warsinski.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Actually, let me go grab the clicker. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight are a couple different agreements. I'm going to go ahead and provide some background on the project, and then we'll go ahead and jump into the nitty-gritty in terms of the details of each of the agreements. Item 9 is for conditions of approval compliance agreement. If you can believe it, this project was originally entitled in 2007. After long staking work on trying to recruit businesses to that site, 2007, we got Kohl's. And Kohl's built, they started building prior to the recession, and they finished building after the recession had hit. So if Kohl's would have waited probably 6 or 7 months to start construction, the Kohl's wouldn't be there. So all the other uses on the entire property stalled for quite some time. The property owner ended up losing the property. It was held by Wells Fargo for, I think, 4 or 5 years, in which they had no interest in selling it. And then finally, maybe 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, Wells Fargo finally sold the property to the current owners. And the current owners have looked to buyers to develop the site. So that's where we find ourselves today, is the ownership of the property has no intention on actually developing. They just bought it. Who we've been working with recently is a development group that actually intends to develop the shopping center. So if everyone's not, or if anyone is not familiar with the site, that's called the San Gorgonio Village Specific Plan. It is within the 2nd Street Marketplace area of town. It is directly across the street from the Walmart. On the east side, it is bordered by your brand new Panera Bread and Sonic. On the north side is bound by 2nd Street, right across from Walmart. The south side is bounded by 1st Street, and Commerce Way actually bisects the property, the 14 acres. So you have a certain amount of property on the east side of Commerce, and you have a small, I want to say roughly, let's say 3 acres on the west side of Commerce that adds on to the Kohl's site. So Kohl's is actually in the specific plan, like I alluded to. That built, the rest of the property has sat vacant for years. It was so close on going vertical that much of the infrastructure related to the buildings, like the sewer lines and water lines, are installed under the ground. So the developer came in, they had a new site plan. The site plan was approved by the city in substantial conformance with the specific plan. So currently, as we sit today, the property is fully entitled and ready to build. So what brings us here tonight is in the substantial conformance review, what we do is we look at the site plan, staff looks at the site plan, make sure it conforms with the specific plan. We also look at the conditions of approval that were placed on the project and make sure that if things need to be added, we add those. In this scenario, we found a couple conditions of approval that read as following, and that's attachment A, and it says condition of approval 3.9 from planning, public works condition 2.1, require certain off-site improvements recommended in the traffic study be constructed, and planning condition 3.9 specifies that some of these improvements must be completed prior to occupancy of any commercial use on the project. So getting into what the traffic study says is it identified intersections back in 2006 and 2007 that would be negatively affected by the proposed project. So in the substantial conformance review that we just did this year, the developer put together a new traffic impact analysis that updates the numbers from 06 to 2018. As you can imagine, the numbers are much different. A lot more development has occurred. Some of the uses that were contained in the original project are different. And some are the same. So we look at the new traffic study, and the new traffic study identifies 4 intersections that are potentially negatively affected by this project. So the way the old conditions of approval read is this development company needs to build all 4 intersections. That comes with a very hefty price, as well as every other development within the area that paid their fair share in terms of impact fees or built their own small intersections, or the ones that come next are going to come in for $0. So all the improvements within the area would be borne by this development. All the other ones get off scot-free, if you will. One of the issues is the budget on the project is fairly tight, and they don't have $600,000, $700,000 extra plugged in to build all of the intersections. And the traffic study identifies what trips generated from their project contribute to the problem. It's called the cumulative impact of their project on all the other intersections. So the traffic study says that they owe specifically the number one, getting into some of the nitty-gritty on the agreement, is Highland Springs Avenue and 6th Street is going to fall below your level of service, level of service, ideal level of service. So City Council in your general plan has a set standard for your level of service, and that is that every intersection in the city will operate at level of service D or better. So that's your baseline. As soon as it hits level of service E, that's your threshold, and that's when the improvements need to be made to bring it back to D or better. So this intersection, Highland Springs and 6th, actually Ramsey, because the improvements needed are on Banning's side of the street. That one, when the project's done, will fall to E, and therefore needs to be improved prior to the start of the project, or prior to occupancy of the project. The other intersections, restriping of Highland Springs northbound, so 1B on my staff report, intersection 2, which is Pennsylvania and 1st, Highland Springs and 8th, which is a small restriping plan, and then intersection 4, which is Highland Springs Avenue and eastbound 10 ramps. So the first one I alluded to, which is some additional restriping and signal modifications at 6th and Highland. The traffic study identified 11% of that cost, or 11% of the project trips are going to affect that intersection. So what we normally do is just accept the fair share of that signal improvement. So their contribution would be 11% of the total cost of the improvements. Pennsylvania, it's at 29%, so almost 30%, so that attributes to about $76,850. Highland Springs and eastbound 10 are a TUMP facility, so that's the interchange, Highland Springs interchange. That's a TUMP facility. They will be paying their applicable TUMP fees on every building within the project. So that's their fair share under the TUMP program to that one. As you can imagine, it would be fairly hard for one project to build an entire interchange, and that's why the impact fees are in place the way they are. So that's really the nitty-gritty on what the updated, we call it the updated traffic study. That's the one dated July 16th of 2018. That's kind of what came out from that traffic study. So since then, there was a couple other items that staff has asked the developer to include in the traffic study, and that's currently being revised as we speak. Also in that, we'll call it the updated traffic study 2, I guess, for lack of a better term, it also is going to take into account all the other projects within the area. So the original one and the one done in July didn't take into account project trip generation from the city of Banning. Even though we know there's 3,000, 4,000 units on Pardee's side of Highland Springs, as well as another 2,000 units over to the east of Sun Lakes. So those projects, if we're going to be talking about regional intersections, we need to be talking about regional project cumulative impacts. So those are being added into the mix. What we plan on doing is looking at the traffic analysis. Once our traffic engineer is happy with that analysis and we say okay and accept it, those changes to the intersections will be amended as part of the agreement and then executed by the mayor at that point in time. And then we'll bring back an update on what those changes were. If I had to guess, we will probably see more than these 4 intersections negatively affected by year 2025. But this project's fair share will probably lower. So say Highland Springs, we said that was 11%. My guess is when you factor in this 13 or 14 acres with the 4,000 units in Banning, their 11% is probably going to drop, and Banning's going to need to pick up the remaining share of those ones. So that's my guess on what's going to happen. I could be way off, but we will be amending or modifying this agreement with the dollar amounts, and the developer has agreed to that, and we'll bring back an update on what that is when it's done. The fiscal impact portion of the staff report is the developer as part of the payment of the impact fees they're due at building permit issuance. They'll deposit their fair share of all of the intersections identified in the traffic study prior to issuance of any building permit. And then lastly, for the recommendation, staff does recommend that City Council amend, first of all, number 1, amend planning condition of approval 3.9 and public works condition of approval 2.1 to read as follows. The project shall either construct the improvements in accordance with the recommendations of the traffic study prepared by the project by Lynn Scott Law and Greenspan Engineers, dated 2016-2018, or deposit its fair share of the improvements to be constructed to the City of Beaumont as per conditions of approval compliance agreement. And 2, and I gave you this because there was a outdated staff report that was posted, and I apologize for that. I'll take blame. The second recommendation is to authorize the mayor to execute the conditions of approval compliance agreement upon incorporating the revisions related to the revised traffic analysis as approved by the Public Works Department. And that's that scenario I explained that they're currently working on it, and it's not done yet before tonight's meeting. You may wonder why I'm bringing it now versus waiting until it's done. And the reason that we are doing that is that the gentlemen that intend to develop the site are under escrow, and they want to close escrow prior to the next meeting or soon thereafter. And what they're looking at is some assurance from the city that before they buy the property, they're not going to have to construct 4 full intersections at their sole burden and their cost. So the concept is to get the conditions changed to what we would typically do now, This condition was written by the prior administration and the prior Public Works Director that basically said, we don't care how much it costs. You guys are going to build here. You build all of our intersections at your cost. As you can see, from 2007 till now, no one's figured out a way to pencil out that project with that condition of approval there. It just doesn't make sense. So that's one of the reasons that they've asked. They said, look, this is the condition that's killing us. We can't get lending on the project to construct this extra $500,000 or $600,000 in traffic improvements. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have. I'm sure you may have some of it. The applicant is here as well. The PowerPoint I put together is the site plan that's been approved for the project. So as you can see, here's the Coles. Oh, the laser doesn't work on the TV. So if you can imagine, I'm pointing at the Coles. That right there is the movie theater at the corner of Commerce and First. And then over here is some retail. This thing over here is the fitness center. And then there's a grocery market. And then a couple restaurant or fast food restaurant pads closer to 2nd Street. This is a zoom in of the Coles and the theater, as well as a restaurant retail pad. This is the zoom in on the other ones. This is the elevations that were approved. So you can see Fitness Center Market. Obviously, it's going to have the brand names on there. This is kind of just the placeholder for the sign program. Here are the retail shops shown on the elevations. These are the fast food pads. And then that's the elevations for the movie theater. So the group that we've been talking to right now is a 12 screen, so it should be anywhere between 10 and 12 screens is what they've talked to us about. So I can answer any questions. Once again, the developer is here to answer any questions that you may have of them that I have no clue how to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Do we have public comment on this item?
Not for this item.
Thank you. I will open it up to council then. Questions from council? Councilmember Santos?
Yeah, on the, Kyle, I have a questions on the, your item number 4 on the intersection. And there's no, was not included on this presentation is the I-10 westbound off-ramp. I mean on-ramp on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is the left turn lane. And we're having always a problem on that. I mean, you know, I think we need to, you know, to have a 2-lane left lane on that, on the westbound. And then to, you know, to mix up on that, I mean, we have a straight northbound 2 lanes in there. We could use the other lane close to the left turn and make it 2 left lane in there. There always, you know, a jump pack on the back of that.
Yep.
And I was surprised that was not part of this, you know, this project.
Yeah, so the intersections identified as being lower level of service than your set standard by year 2025. It somewhat seems like it's poor now, right, when you drive it. Mm-hmm. But the level of service, believe it or not, is not below D, which is our city goal. That's our policy. So even though you sit there for a while, it's still not below D currently. That being said, you're completely right in terms of how to fix the intersection, provide additional lefts onto the freeway, provide additional straights, both directions. What it requires is the bridge widening under the freeway to accommodate additional lanes, as well as the ramps being reoriented and all that fun stuff. So it's a TUMP facility. The programming will come from WRCOG to the local cities. This one will be a joint project because it sits right on the border of Banning and Beaumont. So it'll need to be designed by whoever takes the lead, as well as funded by the TUMP program. So like all projects that affect any of the intersections within town, they're paying their TUMP fees, which the intent of the TUMP program is to be able to take every project's fair share of major backbone infrastructure improvements like this, and then WRCOG funds those improvements to the local regions.
Have we addressed that questions we have or concern on that left turn on westbound?
I know that in talking to Public Works, we're designing, Christine, we're not under design on Highland Springs interchange right now currently.
That's correct.
But it's something that's been a priority project discussing with WRCOG, because we don't have money to design it right now. So as soon as they program money to, if it's Beaumont that's going to be the lead agency, or if Banning's going to be the lead agency on design with Caltrans, WRCOG needs to fund us to start design. And then once that happens, we'll be looking at all types of design aspects to accommodate the concern you're talking about.
Okay.
In our last conversation had a third party, so neither entity, Beaumont or Banning, would be in charge. We would actually contract with a third party, probably the county or somebody else, to actually be the lead on that project, is what they're anticipating.
Very good. Thank you.
If you remember, Beaumont provided about $2 million pursuant to the WRCOG settlement agreement for the PS&E, the preliminary design and estimate, cost estimate for that interchange as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Lar.
So Kyle, so we've got item number 1, which is Highland Springs Avenue and 6th Street, which is going to be completed at occupancy or prior to occupancy, correct?
Yeah, it's either they complete it prior to occupancy or they give us the deposit. Ideally, we would have the restriping completed.
Okay. And then when you get into items 2, 3, and 4, then those can be completed, according to here, this 2025?
That's when the traffic study states that the level of service will fall from D to E is by 2025. Not now, not when the project's done.
Okay. So who monitors that level of service? Because the concern that I have is obviously traffic is bad in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that everybody needs to pay their fair share of the improvements, but as traffic continues to get worse, I'm just concerned that where do we monitor that and how does that get fixed?
So that would be
2025 seems too far off.
It's something that the city should be monitoring. So when we identify a signal as operating poorly, we can look at it for different things. It may be a timing issue with that signal. It may be how to retime some of the traffic movements to make it operate more efficiently, or it may require the intersection to be really improved by widening or something else like that. So we would monitor it, and then assuming it was becoming worse or it fell to a level of E prior to 2025, City Council would prioritize that project in its capital improvement plan, and therefore we as the city would take our impact fees related to traffic signals and then go out and make those improvements on the intersection that has fallen to a level that's no longer acceptable.
Okay. And then because this is which I think was great that we required an updated traffic study, they're saying at this time those intersections are not at D or E level. They are at D right now.
Yeah, they are not. There's actually a figure in the traffic study as part of, I think, the traffic studies attachment B. So if you flip to, let's find it. There's table 7.1. I don't know what page that is in terms of the staff report. It's page 15. If you get into the actual traffic study, it's page 15, and it has existing conditions, peak hour intersection analysis, and it shows that the level of services on all of the studied intersections. So you can see 6th and Ramsey in the PM is operating at that level of service E today. That's why with the project, it's still going to be at E, which is why the extra left turn lane, if you're coming to Beaumont on Ramsey and you want to go south on Highland Springs, there's one turn lane right now. Right. The traffic study says if there's 2, that'll bring it back to level service D or better. Because that's where your weight is at that left turn lane, especially if people want to go to the fitness place or some of the other things we plan on building there. But all the other ones are level of C. There's a 8th and Wilson's a D in the PM, but everything else currently right now is existing C.
In your packet, that's page 278 in your packet.
Okay. So then what you're indicating is that the city will continue to monitor these intersections after occupancy?
Yes.
Okay.
We
That's
really
all I
have
have.
to do an annual traffic counts of key intersections, and tracking where we are, and then programming that into the CIP.
And that'll also be combined with the improvements that we're doing to Highland Springs or Banning, that we're working together with on that.
Right, so that'll look at the Pennsylvania improvements that are currently under design.
Okay.
And then, we've got widening and signalization that's be part of that project, as well as the other elements that are here. So it'll look at that over time.
So the projects that we're currently working on with Pennsylvania, were those also taken into consideration with this traffic study as well? That's all I have right now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, just a few comments. So I appreciate the traffic study update. However, my traffic study are the 40,000 people that are calling and yelling at me when the traffic's a mess. So I really want to affirm what Councilman Lara said as far as this priority, because 2025 is, that's pretty silly. So the Pennsylvanian first, I think, is going to be our major concern there, and I'm really concerned about that area. So we'll see, of course, when occupancy comes in, but we'll bring this back and we'll definitely have a talk about rating and prioritizing that. We had talked about at Commerce and Second, the north and southbound traveling of a covered signal at one point, and then it kind of stopped. And you can obviously see that this is going to be a major issue there now. So are we going to up that talk at some point? Because we talked about it and it kind of stopped and we were going to wait and see, and then now we're at the point. See, I'm really trying to get a proactive ahead of the game. The residents really, they get there and we're stuck, and it's still 3 years in the planning and we're facing the traffic now. So if we can kind of see some of this stuff, that's obviously going to be a problem. Now, I know we have to go by numbers and the D and all that stuff, but again, I'm sure we have some flexibility there on this prioritizing thing. So do we have a plan for that Commerce and Second north and southbound cover signal?
I know that Public Works is looking at it. I don't personally have an update on what the status is of that work.
Can we make that a priority to see? Because I've seen several issues coming out of Walmart. You're coming from the other way, and it really is a mess.
We'll get that for your CIP.
Yeah, so, okay, so I know this is coming, but I'm just trying to push it because it'll stall if we don't keep mentioning it. I don't want that to happen. The fair share, I was concerned about it being too low because the number, if it's set for 2025, obviously costs change at that point, but you convinced me now that when other things start popping up, that percentage might be adjusted, so I'm pretty comfortable with that. And as far as the banning input, I assume that our procedures were going through these studies, and then somewhere along the line they're jumping in with comments, or are we just saying, here's what our study said, and then they do their own study, or?
So back when the project was originally approved in 2006 was when the environmental and the traffic was out for public comment. It was approved as such, and what we do in the substantial conformance is we look at it for multiple things. One, what was the square footage that was originally approved? Is this less or more? If it's more, it needed to come back. It was equal to or less than the square footage, so we're okay on the square footage. The next thing we do is we look at traffic. Okay, because the uses are different, what are the traffic patterns related to the traffic impact that was originally approved, and what are they now? And our environmental consultant reviewed that and found it to be less than what was originally done. So we're also under the threshold of what the original approval was for the project.
Okay, and how is our cooperation between the Banning and Beaumont when it comes to projects like this? Do we have a plan involved, and has that been working, or is that something we might have to address in the future?
I think that we definitely, I mean, one of our policies on new projects is to publicly put out the environmental. So it's out for the public. It's sent to all of the neighboring jurisdictions, as well as all of the utilities and so forth. So we solicit comments back, and if there's concerns, then we vet those out. We do the same thing on projects that come over from Banning. So when they send us project environmentals on some of their stuff, we review it, we run through it, we have our environmental consultant review it, and then we write letters of concerns or something that says everything looks good, good luck to you. And we go back and forth on a project by project basis. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. And my last is that you don't see any part of this new amendment that's putting the city in any undue hardship or foreseen burden by taking some of the responsibility off of the developer and putting it more towards our.
No, I see this falling in lines with almost all the other projects in the city. I can't speak for why the previous administration said you guys build all the intersections. This condition of approval change or the amendment puts this project back in line with a brand new project, like the one right next door, right? So the Sonic and the Panera Bread, they just paid their fair share, their traffic signal impact fees per square foot, which is an impact fee that council has established. So they pay that, and then we use those monies to improve intersections throughout the city that fall below level of service D. So this amendment puts it in fair competition with the other projects throughout the city. And to answer your concerns on Penn and First, we are definitely aware of the potential issue there. One of the thoughts that we had with this agreement was if we went with the existing condition approval, it says, okay, you guys go build the intersection right now. Well, we're currently designing, so it would say go put in a signal right now, right? But we're currently designing a widening on Pennsylvania and potentially even on First. And they would go throw in $150,000, $200,000 on the signal today that then would be ripped up, and then we'd use impact fees to put in the brand new signal at the full width, because there would be no saving on any of the poles.
You've answered in the fact that there's a plan. That's the only thing I was looking for, is to make sure there was a plan, and since it's there, that would make perfect sense. So, thank you.
Councilmember White.
So who is the current property owner?
That is G&G Beaumont LLC.
And they are the developer at this point?
No.
Okay.
They're the ones that are owning it and under escrow to sell it to the developer.
Okay, and who's the developer?
The developer, I mean, I know their real company name, but the developer name on the agreement is... Beaumont Land LLC.
Excuse me, Mayor, we showed Ms. Yoromovic respect when she was speaking. Could you ask her to show us the same respect as we try and do our business?
Please let the council continue to ask their questions and get answers without any crosstalk from the audience, if we could. Go ahead.
Okay.
It was Beaumont Land LLC. It's just a limited liability corporation.
Okay. Is this the first time you've brought this plan and discussed the traffic study and the different interchanges that we're going to be working on to council or to planning commission?
Yes, it wouldn't go to planning commission.
Okay.
But it's the first time we brought it to council.
So this is the first time we've heard of this and started discussing this. The reason I ask you that is because former disgraced council member Roger Berg wrote a piece where he writes, the developer who did the Best Buy Ross Aldi development recently purchased this from the bank and had foreclosed on it. This is a good developer who helped create a nice shopping area for Beaumont. He recently discussed revamping the old site that was approved and which has a development agreement. All he wants to do is put in the development with a movie theater, which we need. And then he writes, Lloyd White has stepped in and is trying to get additional traffic signals for banning and more money for the TUMP program to send out of town. The developer is willing to finish the traffic signals on the streets for his development, but is not willing to spend money where he should not have to. I guess Lloyd White wants us to continue to have travel out of town for a movie by either going to Banning or to Redlands, where he works. So when this came up, I was a little bit surprised because I wasn't familiar with any of this, but it turns out this was, I don't have a date on it, but it was before, it was at least a couple months ago.
Sure.
Has Mr. Berg been discussing this project with the staff? As far as you know?
I've never talked to Mr. Berg on this project.
Okay. So my concern, and who's here tonight?
That's the developer.
Okay, my concern is that Mr. Berg has self-appointed himself as a mouthpiece for Alan Copernicus and the former council and administration. And we're in a position right now because of what Mr. Berg and his council did as far as developing projects without the proper infrastructure. And I just wanted to advise you, in my opinion, that Mr. Berg is not a good mouthpiece. And I would recommend that if you have any problems with this, and I'm not saying that it was you that he spoke to. I'm assuming it's more likely it was the owner because he probably had a relationship with the owner beforehand. And I just want to let you know that we are all in support of what you're trying to bring to our city. But we do have a mess, a hole that Mr. Berg and the former council members and the staff put us in, which is our infrastructure, as the other council members have spoken, and as everyone who lives here knows, has not caught up, has not stayed up with all that the developer are doing. So that's why we're bringing this, and that's why it's a sensitive issue towards us. So I just wanted to make that comment. And then I had some questions for you. Are there any contributions planned from Banning at this point for these 4 improvements to these interchanges that we are considering here?
Probably off the top of my head, the TUMP one, because they're a TUMP member agency.
Okay.
So any project within Banning is going to charge TUMP, go to WRCOG, and then get reallocated back to the region. I am not familiar with Banning's local development impact fees. I could probably look into them. My guess is they probably should have some sort of impact fees that take care of intersections. If not, they should probably be looking at establishing those, because I don't know how they're going to mitigate the impacts of new projects if they don't have a fee to go ahead and do so.
Question regarding the TUMP fees, and I'm not sure if Mr. Pardon might need to weigh in on this. The TUMP fees that are appropriate for was number 1, right? Highland Springs and 6?
It would be number...
No, it was the on-ramps.
4.
Yes, number 4. Those have to be approved by the zone. They go through the process of getting approval from the zone is one of the higher...
Or if they're going to be local projects. So you've got regional projects, which would be RCTC and a larger umbrella. And then if you're looking at local projects, and those are zone projects.
Okay. So this would, as a local project, have to go through the zone approval process?
Yeah, and if I can maybe simplify part of your questions,
Sure.
I think. If I can take them piece by piece. So if you look at Highland Springs and 6th or Ramsey, remember that we're looking at that realignment of Ramsey and Joshua Palmer as it kind of comes to that area. And so we've contributed dollars towards that. Banning has got right-of-way acquisition and some other dollars that they're contributing through their CFD program, through their TUMP and DIF programs for that improvement on that side. So there is money that they're putting into it on their side over there. That project, as we understand it, was supposed to be a WRCOG-led project there at the Joshua Palmer Ramsey realignment on that section over there. The restriping of Highland Springs there is really something that we'd have to coordinate back with Banning to do, but in all likelihood, we're developing the dollars that would go towards addressing that issue. Pennsylvania and First Street is Beaumont. That's our project. We're doing that. That's on us. No other community-sponsored event there. Highland Springs and 8th or Wilson. Again, you've got Part E, you've got the Sundance Mirror going on the other side of Highland Springs there. That is part of the TIA and part of the traffic impact that goes on the Banning side. So there will be contribution through the development processes over there for widening and improvements to 8th and Highland Springs. And then Highland Springs and the I-10 eastbound ramps, that's a project that's going to be a tough project, but it's also going to require participation of both Banning and Beaumont. One of the things that we're looking at, and Banning is taking a lead right now, is some redesign of the access ramps right now, so some potential modification, widening to create more capacity as a short-term fix right there on the exit and access ramps there at I-10. So they are taking the lead. They wanted that lead to do that design and get that project going. There was about $1 million of additional Caltrans money that they're willing to put towards trying to make those improvements.
Okay. I'm a little bit concerned. As recent as last night, the mayor of Banning, who's outgoing mayor of Banning, which is, in my opinion, a good thing, he made comments about all of the improvements to retail that we put up and wanted to know what changes and what stuff we've done to mitigate that on Highland Springs. And I explained to him we had this item coming up tonight. And he was not very receptive to that. But my question to you is, when they added Chipotle and they added T-Mobile and the other businesses over there, did they go through the process that we're going through now, which is to plan for improvements to Highland Springs, as far as you know?
It's a good question. I can't answer your question directly because I don't know if they internally planned for improvements or something like that. What I can tell you is that the process I explained on how when we approve projects here, we put it out to the public for comment, including our neighboring agencies as part of an environmental process, environmental review. On the Chipotle, the T-Mobile, and the Kmart remodel into all of those, there was no environmental process done which we were privy to comment on.
Okay.
So they may have done traffic studies, we just never saw them.
Okay. And we have an opportunity because they have 2 new council members coming in. Hopefully we have an opportunity to start working with, that they'll be receptive to our reaching out and working with them. One thing that he brought up again, and I've spoken to city manager about this before, is the claim that we, on our own, shut down that turn, and that we sent them an email saying not only are we shutting it down, but you're going to pay for the study and you're going to pay for it to be fixed. And we've already addressed that before, and I understand that he's misinformed. But I think we need to get ahead of this with the new council members, because I don't know how anyone expects Beaumont and Banning to move forward when our retail and commercial is so tied to each other, just one street dividing us. So
sure.
That's all I think that's all I had. When will when will we start to notice the restriping, the changes to the different interchanges?
So the one that needs to be done prior to the project will be designed by the developer. They're going to put together restriping or street improvement plans. The caveat is the city of Banning has to approve those because the improvements are on the city of Banning side of the street. So they're in process of preparing those. They needed to know that they were going to be able to do those based on tonight's agreement. But the developer has already submitted their grading plans for the site inside Beaumont. So the grading plans for this shopping center have been submitted and are under current plan check by the city. So my guess is they're going to start working pretty heavily on the striping plan, and then hopefully Banning approves that and allows them to, provides an encroachment permit, and then they can do the striping on the one intersection required based on the traffic study. Okay. And potentially any others based on the revised one that's coming through.
Okay. we really need this project, and I'm happy it's moving forward. It's a long time coming. And again, I want to thank staff for bringing this to us and trying to change the culture of way Beaumont has done business in the past, which is uncontrolled growth without proper infrastructure. And bringing this to us and having the developer work with us to put together the infrastructure, I think is really important moving forward, especially for this area. Thanks again.
And Mayor, may I add one more thing? If, based on the thing that Councilmember White wrote, or read, sorry, not wrote, I think if anyone were to take blame for asking them to do a revised traffic study and asking them to do traffic improvements and those things, you're probably, if you ask the developer, they're probably going to point at myself or at the public works staff, because we were the ones that were adamant that the old traffic study from 2006 was no longer valid. And we wanted an updated one, and based on the findings of that new traffic study, there may be different intersections required to be improved. So by no means was it from the dais that these policies came out. That's what staff has been talking to them about for the last, I don't know, 2-3 years or so. So if blame needs to be placed, it should be placed on us.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I agree with many of the other council members that we're really looking forward to this project moving ahead. And we want to be as supportive as we can within that framework. I also am very concerned about the friction that seems to happen between Banning and Beaumont, and sometimes the misinformation that just keeps circulating. We can't seem to make it die sometimes. But so I think we really need to manage this one very carefully, information-wise. I think that we need to come up with some sort of a matrix where Banning knows every step of the way what the potential dates are, how we can cooperate, when we hope that they get feedback to us. Now, on a side note, if they don't approve the striping, does that truly put us at risk for holding this up? Could they just drag their feet on that?
If that scenario presented itself, the conditions of approval compliance agreement allows them to deposit the cost of those improvements to us.
Okay.
And then we would then try to work with Banning to do the improvements. And then if not, then we and the developer have basically exhausted all options in which to perform the necessary work to alleviate the traffic.
Well,
and that meets the intent of the impact fees as well as the traffic analysis.
I think we kind of found out with the turn pocket story that developed that we really have to put everything in writing, and we have to make sure that the structure and the dates of everything, and keep a running history of every single step that goes on here, because what happens is things get repeated over and over. So I think we need to get ahead of this one, and we need to take advantage of the opportunity that we have a new city manager to work with, we have new council members to work with, and I think we need to have a whole proactive communication plan that's in writing, not just verbal with them. I think that they actually need a bit more than just public notification that this is moving along. I think we need to treat them entirely, obviously public communication is all at the same level. The information goes to everybody at the same time. But I think we need to follow that up with extra communication. And I think it needs to be as structured and as documented as possible. And maybe we keep that information updated on when we update the website. I don't know, but I think that needs to be a proactive way that we now deal with every interaction with the Highland Springs line of the two cities, because we just seem to hurt when it doesn't happen the way that we hope it does.
Yep, and I think that's a good idea moving forward, especially when Banning sets to break ground on the Pardee development over 8th and Highland Springs, is we may see that development necessitate that intersection to be built much earlier than 2025, just because that's one of the predominant gateways to that development. So it's very possible, but yeah, I think opening the lines of communication between the cities on Highland Springs and the improvements related therein is a good idea.
I think we need to actually reach to the highest standard that we can on this, because we'll take a little bit of a hit for everything that's missed. So I think the higher we go, the better. And I think that just is going to help you with the development. So I think if we take this on as a different approach in communication, then we stand a chance with that. I'm curious to hear what Banning's response is going to be when there's a contributing factor that's rolled into these numbers and percentages. Do you have any thoughts on that?
On us asking for their share of the intersection?
All right.
I don't.
I think we can probably expect that there may be a little bit of friction on that point too. So the more we document on that, the better. And the more that we document it in proof of formula, and it all has to be data-driven, and it all has to be obvious to everybody that it's data-driven in every way that we move ahead. And, you know, we look forward to a movie theater, and it's been a real burr under a lot of people in Beaumont Saddle that that area has been open for so long. And it just makes you look at it and say, you know, why not? You know, doesn't anybody want to come here? And it's really a good plan, I think, to move ahead with how you've made the adjustments. And I do think that cutting through on First Street to Pennsylvania is really critical to the backbone of this being successful, because it's going to be very hard to increase traffic for the citizens of Beaumont and the citizens of Banning. So that's, every other question seemed to be answered at this point. So,
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve amendment number 2 to professional services agreement with CR&R. I'm sorry, wrong one. Oh, it's changed. Okay. The amend the planning condition of approval 3.9 and public works condition of approval 2.10 to read as follows. And the project shall either construct the improvements in accordance with the recommendations of the traffic study prepared for the project by Linscott Law and Greenspan engineers dated July 16, 2018, or deposit its fair share of the improvements to be constructed to the city of Beaumont as per the conditions of approval compliance agreement, and to authorize the mayor to execute the conditions of approval compliance agreement upon incorporating the revisions related to the revised traffic impact analysis as approved by the Public Works Department.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Item 10, San Gregonio Village Specific Plan, Deferred Development Impact Mitigation Fee Agreement.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will save you the formality of going through the background again, because it's the same project. I can go into a couple details. So the project is around 14 acres. The interested uses at the time involve or include a 39,000 square foot luxury theater and a 17,500 square foot fitness studio, various retail stores and fast food. So the applicant has met, the developer actually has met with myself and the city manager and explained challenges they're facing to bring the project to market and to development. So some of the major issues or challenges right now are, one, the construction costs related to lumber and steel. And that's due to our president's tariffs. So if you're asking a construction company to build you a movie theater and you need an estimate 6 months from now, the costs are much higher because of the uncertainty on what the materials are going to cost. And Councilmember Lara probably sees this on a on a daily basis with his industry. So that's one issue, is construction cost uncertainty. The other one is financial lending for a movie theater. So if you think about financial lending, you walk into a bank, you want to build something, right? So you have the entitlement, you can build it. Well, banks typically need different things to give you a loan. They need collateral or they need capital. In this scenario, the collateral is the building itself. What they're building is a movie theater. If the movie theater is risky, which it is to a bank, lending becomes an issue. It becomes more expensive. The issue it's risky for a bank is because if you build a movie theater, it's harder to modify that building into another use. If you can think about like a shopping center and you just build a shell, if the bank has to do the worst case scenario, which is repossess because they didn't pay the note, you now have a shell which you can turn into, like the Kmart, multiple retail suites fairly easily. Much harder to renovate a movie theater into a Big Five Sporting Goods or a Hobby Lobby because it's set up as a theater with seats and ramps and so forth. So those are the two major obstacles that we're currently facing for one of the key anchor tenants to the shopping center. So the applicant requested the city to consider deferring the payment of certain impact fees related to only the movie theater. Not for the retail, not for the fitness center or the grocery outlet, not for the fast food, just for the one that's having the lending, the higher price lending, as well as the lumber issue. I have attached the draft development impact fee worksheet for the movie theater for your review. As of note, most of these are pretty good numbers. The sewer capacity one is something that we're currently looking at, and that's going to be based on their variables of strength as well as their flow. So we're working with it, but that's kind of that'll be nailed down prior to their building permit being issued in terms of what their fair share is of the sewer treatment plant. The proposed agreement provides deferral of the payment of certain impact fees for the theater only, like I explained. Sorry for going over that again. The agreement does not provide deferral for any other uses. The agreement shall allow the developer to make 12 payments over the first 12 months following the occupancy of the theater, or they can choose to pay the lump sum at month 12. It's up to them in terms of how they do that. The developer does need to provide financial security for the payment of those impact fees prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So the way it would happen is they would pull their building permit. They would pay multi-species because that's not our fee. We pass that along. They will pay TUMF because that's not our fee. We pass that along. And they will pay their sewer fees because currently with what we're dealing with right now with the sewer treatment plant expansion, that is not a fee that staff was willing to allow deferral. So they'll pay those when they pull the permit to build the building. They will finish construction of the building. They'll be given occupancy. Once they get occupancy or prior to occupancy, they have to put a surety in, financial security of one of the different methods contained in the agreement to us to cover the entire cost of the impact fees before they can operate the movie theater. So if they don't put the surety in place, or like a bond or a deed of trust, something like that, they can't operate. As soon as they do that, we'll allow them to operate. They have a year to pay us that money, and then as soon as that's done, the bond or the deed of trust will be pulled off the property, and everyone's even.
Actually, Kyle, to correct you real quick, that surety is due before permits are pulled.
Sorry.
Or issued, yeah.
So, yeah, the surety is due before issuance of building permits. So that'll lock in what the dollar amounts are, and it'll need to be in place when they're building the building versus occupancy. Like I said, it doesn't talk about other agency fees. The total dollar amount right now is $196,916.26. That's subject to slight modifications in case the building changes by, because right now it's 39,000 square feet even. My guess is the building plan's going to show a slight variation in the building size, which will contribute to a slight variation on the total impact fees, but it should be somewhere around that. It cannot be more than 39,000, so it could only go down. Some of the other items that staff considered for this is that this is one of the major anchors for the shopping center. So that's important to us, as if this theater doesn't go up, the rest of the shopping center probably won't develop, because retail anchors are hit or miss these days. Like if you're looking for a Target to anchor a retail center, those just aren't moving. So the way projects are moving in the county is these lifestyle centers. So the anchor on one side is the theater, the anchor on the other side is the fitness gym. Without those two anchors, the rest of the tenants don't necessarily see synergy, or they don't think a lot of people are going to come there for the anchors. So that's one of the reasons we're entertaining this deferral. Another reason is staff believes this theater project is one of those catalyst projects that we talk about at Economic Development Committee or at the council level. And what that does is if the project occurs, it has a large potential to stimulate or spur other development within that region. And you don't get catalyst projects easily. They don't come very often. So that's one of the reasons we contemplated deferring these. The last reason, and potentially one of the most important, is the competitive nature that be a movie theater. As we all know, because we've talked about it, the Pass area will probably get one movie theater for the next 15, 20 years. Maybe at build out of all of the cities would necessitate the demand for a second. But realistically, one of these cities is going to get one and the other cities will not. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, is we want it to be in Beaumont. We want our residents to be proud of this project in Beaumont. And that was reflected on the poll that we did on Facebook on what some of the major uses were. Resoundingly, movie theater is one of the top scores on our informal Facebook poll. So that shows the region wants it. I would hate to lose it to our neighboring cities, even though I'd be happy for them, but on the inside, I would be sad. But that's some of the ideas and the concepts that we were mulling over before we decided to entertain deferring of the impact fees. We don't believe it should be done on all projects. That doesn't meet the intent. But for one like this, in considering the challenges they're facing and what they've told us, we think it's fair at this time. So staff does recommend that City Council approve the development impact fee payment deferral agreement as presented. And I can answer any questions, as well as the developer is here as well.
Thank you. Do we have public comment on this?
We do. Open the time all.
I will open public comment on this item at 7:32 p.m.
Libby Yurmovic?
Kyle Wazinski is an Urban Logic employee. He always has been, he always will be. He's the one that wrote the plans. I don't know why Lloyd White's laughing. I don't think it's funny. Mitigation fees are to be paid in advance to mitigate the impact of roads and fire stations and everything else you're collecting for. The problem with Beaumont is that they put their mitigation fees in the general fund instead of having separate interest-bearing funds. And then they spend the money on lawyers and consultants, and they never build the facilities. If a developer can't afford mitigation fees, then they can't afford to build. It's as simple as that. Every time Kyle wants to throw a project through, they dangle theater in front of Lloyd White, because everybody knows Lloyd White wants to go to the theater. Personally, I'm a conservative. I haven't been to the theater in like 25 years. The last time somebody tried to drag me to the theater, I almost went until they told me it was like $10 to get in. And I would never waste my money like that. But of course, Lloyd White would. So here it is, dangled again. Oh, a theater. Oh, we're going to lose it. If they don't have the money to build it, then they don't have the money to build it. They're just lying to you again. I thought you were going to put your theater over there in the warehouse district. Remember that? No, Lloyd White don't remember because he don't remember from one day to the next.
No other speakers.
No other speakers? All right, thank you. I'll close public comment at 7:34. Councilmember White, would you like to ask the first questions or to make any comment?
No, but I would like to move to approve the agreement as presented.
Do you have questions?
I do. I'm sorry. I'll try to make it quick.
That's all right, go ahead.
So just for clarification purposes, developer impact fees, do we have a separate account for those, or are they commingled with the general fund?
They're accounted for separately.
Accounted for separately?
And we track them separately. They're restricted funds that only go to specific restricted purposes.
Okay. So Kyle, I like the idea of that offering an opportunity for a business person to pay over time or to spread out the fees. In the county, they talk about trying to be more business friendly, trying to stimulate economic growth, but they don't move forward with options or opportunities such as this. And you're right, MSHCP is a separate program, the TUMP fee is a separate program, but those things that we have control over, we can use to help stimulate our economy. I think in the city of Beaumont, that's one of the things that we're sort of lacking is an economy as far as commercial and retail. So I do like the idea. I would like you maybe to consider, city manager to consider maybe developing parameters for future so that we're not just singling the movie theater out. Maybe there's, because I know the movie theater is going to bring in jobs. Movie theater will obviously increase your sales tax. Mm-hmm. So if there are parameters such as maybe the number of jobs that business will bring in, the type of tax base that a project will bring in, I think, and maybe that's an option that we could talk about in the future. I do think that this is a good idea. Talking to developers that I've spoken with, anchors are the key. Because the anchor bring, kind of you build it, they will come. So I understand the importance of getting an anchor in. I understand the number of potential jobs that this will bring to our community. So I just wanted to commend you on looking at options on ways to work with development community and especially people who are trying to help us. So that's all I had, Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry, one last thing.
All right, go ahead.
The only thing I would suggest is that we look at if they take the option of deferring the payment till prior to occupancy instead of paying monthly, mm-hmm. that they pay the fee that's in effect at the time they make the payment. In other words, if the fee goes up, they pay a higher fee. If the fee goes down, they pay the lower fee. But it's what the fee that's in effect at the time the payment's made is my only suggestion.
I think that's more than fair, and that's the intent of the agreement. In fact, the development impact fee worksheet that I provided is using the 2019 fees that you, as council, have approved. They just haven't been rolled into effect yet. So the fee worksheet is on January 1, 2019 numbers. So my guess is they will be issued a building permit in 2019. In the event which that doesn't happen and there's a new fee, then we'll obviously be rolling the new fees or the fees at the time into the deferred payments. And then to just dovetail on your anchors or key concept, is the developer has told me that I think 90% of the shopping center is pre-leased, if you will, based on the anchor as the movie theater and the other anchor as the fitness studio. So as long as those things work out well, they could relay off all the types of uses that have pre-leases, but until they actually own the property, and hopefully less than a month, is when we'll know when hard leases are signed.
And the wife would really appreciate another nice dining restaurant, so I throw that out there.
Better than Sonic? Sonic good? Less than?
Okay.
You're a Red Robin?
All right.
I just want to add a couple of comments, and then I'll find out if we have any other questions from council. And I'll give Councilmember White the honor of doing his motion again. But I do want to say, I don't believe that there is anybody on this dais that is foolish enough to just think that this is a shiny object in front of the city of Beaumont. It will employ people. It will also employ a lot of young people who actually work in the theater. I also believe that it's going to be a big uptick on quality of life for the residents, and I believe that we need to have a place for kids to go. And one of the things Beaumont needs is more places for kids to go that are good choices at night, and I think the theater does that. It also will be a significant visible thing from the highway, and it will make the whole city look more vital. It will also feed all of the restaurants, fast food restaurants, even the fitness center. It's going to give us good visibility, and it will generate more sales tax than just the movie theater will. So, and I believe that within some good restrictions, that it really is helpful to think out of the box at certain times and to really do partnering under the right circumstances. So, do you have questions or comments?
Oh, just a quick comment and suggestion. I mean, on the agreement, looking at the 1.3 security for payment on that, and I know on top of that, it says in there the payment due date. It will be amount is due in full, but on item 1.3, on line item number 4. The deed of trust, if you do pick that, I would suggest that, to have it cannot be subordinate. In any case, if they do, they have their own project or something. So everything will be full in payment, just to secure the city. Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a quick comment that I think that this creative type of thing that we're doing here just shows that we are very friendly for development in Beaumont, for increasing our businesses, and it's a pleasure to have you. And we're looking forward to the many things that'll improve here in Beaumont. And if you can imagine, if we took the attitude of you can't get your fees, don't build, then the dirt would stay and it would stay and the weeds would get there. So I'm glad that we don't take that approach on this council. I agree. And move positive in the future. So.
Yeah, let me first respond to some of the comments earlier. Yeah, I want a movie theater. I think everyone who's moved here, since I've moved here, last 12 years, wants a movie theater. You guys did a great Facebook survey, and I think movie theater was number 1 or 2. Also real high was something families could do, and this brings both of that. I just think it's interesting that Ms. Yaramovic and her close friend Roger Berg, Roger says, I want to stop it. Yaramovic says, I'm doing everything I can to bring one. They need to get their drive-by media attack a little more coordinated. So with that, I'd like to move to approve the agreement as it was presented.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes.
Mayor, can we take a break?
Yes. We will take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Generous.
So walk slow.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Can you throw me a helper?
It was like, what, huh?
Actually, I really like it. And then I added the necklace.
Unfortunately, it happened. It's not true.
Oh, it's not true?
The final countdown?
That's it. No, but I've heard turn off the lights as part of
Oh, those quite appropriate. Any of those will work. Well, it's coming close.
It's been fun.
It's been
Yes.
It's been real, it's been fun, it hasn't been really fun. Well,
Definitely.
of course. Oh, that's a good one. Never mind.
I want another species on the line.
You got it. Well,
You're gonna miss us. I know, you're gonna miss us.
they'd rather.
Yeah. You must have played.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes, we will. When you come in and then, oh, no, you. Mine's more adequate.
You're gonna be
Yeah, it will be great. Yeah.
Such a nice.
It is.
I was Wells Fargo with this. Because I've been watching that.
Yeah.
They got some, inquiries on trouble. Wells Fargo. That's why I asked me about that. I said, no, you cannot touch that, man. I'm still in process.
Susie, Public Works approved the rates?
Oh, that's
Hard copy?
Hey, after the meeting.
Hand delivered.
Yes,
That is,
don't remember.
exactly.
I won't.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, kind of.
Well, miss.
Don't mind.
We'll show up once.
Yes,
Yes, exactly. So I wanted to show you this, look at on this next one, number 11. So here's the new ordinance for,
Oh, for garage sales?
yeah, look at it, it says property by means of an on-site sale. On-site?
On site, yeah.
On-site is a football term. Actually, off-site is, you're off-site.
Yeah, that's gotta be a typo.
It's a typo, huh? I wonder if I need to say anything.
Number 11, yeah.
Because if they approve it that way, it's wrong. I can't abide by that.
Person, to
I do wanna
dispose of
get a
personal
picture with us
property
and
by
the whole
means of an
council.
on-site sale. Yeah, on-site, that doesn't even make sense.
I think it's supposed to be a T and not a D. Well, I'm glad they left. The two of them.
Aren't you, it's always nice to see them walking out.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I just can't stand
She's so beautiful.
Would you stand up in public and criticize the city council member because he wants to be, what?
She's a lot like Trump.
Oh, yeah, same thing. She's a conservative? Yeah, I guess she is.
I would spend $10.
It hasn't been $10 in, yes, she does. It hasn't, I wanted to say, it hasn't been $10 in 5 years.
Okay, we are reopening the meeting at 8 p.m., 7:59 to be exact. We're on item 11. Review and approval of changes to Municipal Code Section 5.08.110 patio, garage, and/or yard sales for notice of public hearing to be held December 4th, 2018. Now, we do have Nicole, who's going to summarize.
This is presented before you per your request. So we brought this before you for any other changes in addition to the red lines provided. There is another section down below that restates the 6-month provision. So we'll need to edit that also to take out the every 6-month provision, plus a couple typos here and there. This will still need to have a public hearing, so that will be done December 18th for a final on the following meeting to go into effect.
Thank you. This is for discussion and direction to staff. I think the change is a good change, positive for the overall. Any other council members have a comment?
I'm good with it. With the changes you discussed.
Okay, perfect. And we'll move forward with doing the legal advertisement, and we'll bring it back for a public hearing.
All right, thank you. And that's December 4th on the agenda, correct?
It'll be December 18th. We need
Okay.
time.
All right. All right, thank you. We are on item 12, discussion and direction to staff regarding municipal code sections 17.07.070, signs, general provisions, and 17.07.080, signs permitted in all zones.
This item was also requested to be brought before you for adjustment or amendment. I've also attached other cities' political sign codes, just for reference or ideas or to help amend this. Whatever changes that are made, we'll put those together and we'll do the same thing, do the legal advertisement and bring it back for public hearing on December 18th.
So let me just add to that since we're talking about an area that gets into potentially content regulation, where you're restricting or regulating the content of speech on signs, it's a and should be a highly protected area. It's a First Amendment issue. Our Supreme Court has been very protective of the right of individuals to express their views, and there are restrictions on government's ability to restrict content of speech. And so if the council was inclined to update the ordinance, we'd work with staff on updating it to make sure that it complies with current law, including relatively recent U.S. Supreme Court decisions. And as individuals that have all sworn to uphold the Constitution, our primary objective is to ensure that we protect the right of people to express their opinions. So. But if you're inclined to make changes, what we would do is work on an updated ordinance and bring it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Does council want to make comments or?
Can I
Sure.
ask quick? John, can I ask you something, the one you just expressed? What about the, we call it on our industry, is the banded, advertising? Is that part of the, somebody will just put it on every exit of our city, a sign about buy these houses, certain phone number in there.
So that's
part of that. I mean,
there's a difference between commercial speech and non-commercial speech. And the rule of law that applies to commercial versus non-commercial speech is a little bit different. And the city can regulate commercial speech as long as it has a substantial interest in doing so, and as long as the regulation is reasonable. So, I mean, there are things that we can regulate. We can regulate billboards, for example, that contain commercial speech. So to answer your question, yes, we can regulate commercial speech, but we have parameters within which we can regulate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Any other comments or questions from council?
Let me ask a few clarifying ones first before I get into suggestions. So, do we have, I thought we had, now when I ran back, it might have been different now, I haven't been paying attention, but I thought we had a placement and installation agreement with our political signs. I remember at one time where we had to list where they went and that we agreed to take them down, and we had all this thing, we had a sign saying that we would uphold this and so forth. Are we still doing that? Or?
Yes, that's part of the
All right.
encroachment permit.
The only reason I say this is it's not in here, so I didn't know if that's something we'll have to insert, because one of the cities did have it in there as far as their policy there. What's the difference between campaign and political? We use the word political sign, but some of the cities has differentiated between campaign signs and political signs. So,
well, political speech can be something that doesn't relate to a campaign issue.
Right.
Okay. There are political issues that are in the public debate right now that are not necessarily tied to a candidate or a measure that's on the ballot. And people have a right to express their political views, certainly on their private property. They have a right to do that. A campaign speech would be related specifically to a candidate or measure that's on a ballot.
and if we decided that we wanted to differentiate those two definitions, we could try it, or, I mean, it'll be up for discussion, but I just, again, I was comparing ours to some of the cities that were put up there, and I've noticed some of them did use them differently than we had it. It mentions something about message substitution policy on number 15. What is that? It says that, displaying messages may be displayed on private property in any zone at any time under the message substitution policy of this chapter. I don't know what that means.
So usually what message substitution refers to is, it's a term that refers to a situation, for example, when somebody has an on-site sign that is advertising goods or services that are available at that location, they can switch that commercial message for a non-commercial message. So let's say that they wanted to switch it for political, something not necessarily a campaign issue, but something that was political in nature, a statement that they wanted to make. They would have the right to do that.
Okay. And we are not charging a permit fee for political signs, is that right? Or we are charging them?
You've got your your right-of-way encroachment permit that's required, which has got a fee associated with it.
Okay, so there's a fee with that. And what happened to our electronic sign ordinance looking into? We were going to do that a while back, and then I noticed here it was a part of the prohibited things where we don't have anything flashing and so forth. Is that a part of this discussion to see if we're going to?
This was just looking at the political signs, but yeah, staff has that on their to-do list to research that.
Of course. All right, in our many to-do list. Sure. All right, I'm going to stop there for now, and I might jump back in there.
Okay. Almost 4 years ago, we brought this up because I think the problem with our sign ordinance at that time, and still is a problem, is that it favors incumbents because of the way a lot of this is written. And then as we navigated this last campaign season through the sign process, some things came out that are just very curious. So if you look at page 2 of our sign ordinance, bottom page 2, number 15, it starts talking about political signs. The political signs have some separate rules and requirements, but you go back up to where it talks about signs in the public right of way, and I believe it talks about that. Oh, no, it's section 15A. Number of signs not limited, maximum size of any sign,
Which page are you on?
2 of 9,
Okay.
15A. And then you go to the top of the next page, number 5 is a really good one that I don't know how you navigate through that one. So it says placement shall be at least, this is signs in the public right of way. Placement shall be at least 5 feet from any sidewalk, property line, or driveway. Now tell me where there's a place in public right of way in City of Beaumont where you got 5 feet on one side to the end of a sidewalk and 5 feet to the property line on the other side. It's just, you can't do it. Also, my goal when we brought this up 4 years ago was to get rid of the sign ordinance completely because like I said, I feel it's restrictive to challengers as opposed to incumbents. But if you look also, the idea, one of the things we came up, we thought we were really smart to do this, which was we limited the number of signs to 50 signs in the city for campaign. But we didn't. We limited the number of signs to 50 signs per encroachment permit. But you're allowed to get 6 encroachment permits within a 1-year period, I believe. So technically, you could still put up 300 signs. But then if you look at the restrictions on commercial and industrial, and this is where I think incumbents have a big advantage. When I ran 4 years ago, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any of the property owners. I didn't know the commercial developments. And so I was following all the rules by the right of way, whereas my opponents, which were incumbents, could put up big signs anywhere they wanted as long as they knew the property owner. And as you know, we just met another property owner. So incumbents have that advantage that I think challengers don't have. I'm still in favor of what Redlands does. Redlands has no rules. It looks crazy, but they don't have they don't have a huge staff requirement as far as, monitoring it and enforcing it. And when you enforce our sign ordinance, it's very easy to be accused of enforcing it selectively because you just can't be on top of every issue and every problem. If you look at the Mountain View resolution ordinance, it's one paragraph. It says, no person shall erect or display or cause or authorize any person to erect or display any political sign on any public property. And the exception is, notwithstanding the prohibition on placement of political signs on public property, the city council shall designate by resolution public properties on which political signs may be placed. Political signs placed on public property pursuant to this section shall be posted no sooner than 75 days prior to an election, and such signs must be removed within 10 days following the election. Each candidate or position on a ballot shall be limited to 1 sign for each public property location designated, and each sign shall comply with placement and size limitations of this article. So, we can, I don't really have a problem with the size, and we have to fix the placement issue. But one of the thoughts that I had during this process was, if we designated a couple of the more well-traveled public streets, and what comes to mind, and I don't want to get bogged down in arguing which streets are the right streets, but let's say Oak Valley, let's say 6th Street, Beaumont Avenue, maybe now with all the development over there, 1st Street or 2nd Street, and we just, as a council, designated that those are the streets where you can put your signs. Then, you still, it was brought to my attention that just because you put a whole bunch of signs up in the city on public right-of-way because you paid the permit fee, you really aren't showing your true support. What's showing your true support is how many people are putting signs in their front yard. And we don't restrict that as much. So, I think if we had an area or a place that we told people, you can place them along this street, you don't have to worry about the 5 feet, you do have to worry about, obstruction of view, things like that. I think that'd go a long way. What they do in parts of Hawaii is the only sign that you're allowed to have is one that's held by the candidate. And so everyone in the city knows I can go and find the candidates, because every afternoon they're going to be standing there holding their sign, and that's, you know, that's the way that they dealt with this. But I'm more in favor of just 45 days before, 10 days after, really no, you know, highly restricted. We do need to put sort of sign sizes on it, but again, I think it's right now it's unmanageable, and it is favors incumbents as opposed to making it fair, I think, for all challengers as well. So that's my thoughts.
Councilmember Laura, do you have any comments?
The sign thing was difficult. There's nothing in here on font size, too. I don't just.
Good point.
One of the things, if you look at 15 on 2 of 9, and you look at item 1, it says maximum number of signs is not limited. Then you go to item 3, maximum area size shall be combined 20 square feet. So on one line, we're saying it's not limited, and then 2 lines later, we're saying, but you can't have it bigger than this. So I think we need to clean up the language. I think Councilmember White has some good comments, because it, I don't know if everybody that had signs, political signs that were put up, had obtained a permit. One of the concerns I have is staff time in trying to monitor that. The other concern I have too is staff cost in cleaning up after, if folks don't do what they can to try to pick up their signs. And so those are things I would like to address. And maybe that's the easiest way, is just to be able to put them on in certain areas, take them down where they're not allowed, and have people put them in their yards. And so that maybe that's just too easy. I don't know, but it seems like it'd be a lot cleaner. Again, my focus is just limiting the staff time that they have to take out of their schedules, where they can be serving the citizens and monitoring signs. It just gets to be.
You know, one of the other challenges we had was picking our signs up.
Right.
Because when they're all over, you're not going to get them all. And people drive around and see your sign and it's still there, and you know, you don't know about it. I think, again, if it's in one area,
Right.
you know where to go and pick them up. And
That's true. It will make cleanup easier.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm sold on the favor incumbent type approach. You know, I am kind of in favor of a Redlands approach, where either you have a detailed ordinance or you have no ordinance, or a very loose ordinance.
Right.
You know, so we might have to figure out if we're going to do, which way we want to go, and go that way. You know, it still leaves it up to the candidate to find those areas that they think they want to concentrate their campaign to. It's a message that they're trying to get apart to a certain portion of the public, and for someone to say, well, here, we think this is good for you. And granted, some of those places are very good, but there are also other places that are just equally as good that maybe you didn't think about. So who's going to be the monitor and saying where is good and where is not good? So I think that kind of gives a little bit of we lose a little bit of the independence of the candidate when we start telling them where they need to put them, where they don't put them. As far as private property, you know, I don't think there really is any way to limit that for persons, what you can and what you can't put up there. So I think that's a non-issue. As far as vacant properties and private properties, I mean, some of these cities that I read were very, you kind of have this written, you had to have it posted to the back. I think that's ridiculous. I think you meet people, and if you're going to be a part of the community, you want to run, you're going to go out and try to meet people any way you can. So I think they'll get to know people if they want to use their property and so forth. That's just my opinion there. But you know, I'm not really sure which way I'm going on this yet. I surely know that I'm not ready to give any direction today, but I'm willing to definitely listen to some input. But right now, I don't know. Let's hear some more. Yeah.
Councilmember Santos?
Yeah, I will, express or share my experience being the first one who really, out there putting signs of my own signs. And Lloyd is right. I mean, because we put it in my community. You could drive on my community. I mean, most of the streets in there is you could see Ray Santos in there. There's no other political sign came in on that on Tournament Hills. So at least you know that. I mean, the area on that side, both sides. I mean, nobody comes in there. Now I put 5 big signs in Beaumont Avenue, 6th Street. There's a lot of hit up, people out there. One is Roger Burke. I mean, really pissed. And I say, you put the sign really illegal and everything. The sign is not allowed and everything. So I said, hey, it doesn't say on the rules and regulation. I follow rules and regulation. And after that, he was quiet and everything. But a day before, I'm not accusing him, a day before the election, my sign was gone. Good thing is, a day before. So somebody asked me, did you remove your sign? I said, no, I will not do that a day before the election. And then to add up on that, I mean, on the Desert Lawn Avenue, I pass by there 5 times a day. On a Sunday, there's one big truck in there that removed on the process of removing my sign and Lloyd's and Mike's sign on our right of way, the city's right of way, because there's only 4 signs in there. Roy sign is over there, but mine was removed, and I turned around with my wife and park over there, and then I asked him, and I said, hey guy, what are you doing? And my sign was already on the truck, and then he's in the process of removing it. And so I introduced myself and everything, and then he said, hey, are you Ray Santos? I said, yes, I am. And that's Lloyd and Mike. Don't be pissed, man. And he said, sorry about this. It was a Sunday. And I told him, you know what? I mean, the only thing I would ask you, do a penance. I want you to put it back, the sign, and the sign was so dry, I know it will be hard to put it back. And he did. He was sweating and everything. I just standing there, and then standing there, watch him. I'm not leaving, man. Put it back. So that's my experience on this political signs and everything. But other than that, I mean, individual signs is really good. That it means they're being supported on individual political, signs and plus the candidates. So that's all I have to comment on the previous elections. Thank you.
I got a question. I just want to know, if that's okay, I just want to know, are non-local candidates, are they still required to follow everything that a local candidate? Because that's where I see the biggest problem. I don't even see it with our candidates locally, because we all live here, so we all follow it pretty strictly, I think. But it's the ones that are going for senators or governors or things that they have no clue what our ordinance is, and they're all over the place in places that are a mess, on polls and everything that breaking the law. That's where I see the biggest of the clutter and the problem is, for me, with political signs. So I don't know how we address that, or, I mean, who do you go to get those down, or do you just take them down? I'm not sure, because then we're talking about staff issue. But, if we're talking about issues or problems that we see with signs, I see personally more of the non-locals that I see around town.
To follow up on that too, do they pay the fee on that? On those people? Can we publish that who pays the fees. So we know they're being allowed.
Yeah, we can run a report to see what encroachment.
Yeah, because there's a lot of signs in there. So suddenly will pop up, 3 days before the election, just pop up in there, So it means my conclusion on that, they haven't paid our fees on that side.
That's a good idea.
Well, if you want a guy to take signs down, Ray knows a guy.
Yeah.
I can't, one of the things that is really pretty critical is the degree to which we go through enforcement, because if signs go up and they're in contravention, we can try to reach out to the candidate. If they don't remove it, the city's going to go remove it, and that's a terrible optic situation. We may be in the right, but we always, get concerned, particularly when we get close to election day. The city was removing my sign. If it is a competitor to an incumbent, that is really bad. So I would just encourage you to kind of think about that.
That's good.
As we talk about how you can go through implementation when you're into the election cycle. That can be.
And I agree with what Todd said, and it may be a good idea when we have the ordinance, if the direction of the council is to update the ordinance, that we give sort of a presentation on what the parameters are from a First Amendment standpoint. And we'd be happy to do that. But just to give you an overview, we're focusing in on political speech. We're focusing in this discussion on campaign signs. That seems to be the focus. And so to the extent that a city adopts regulations that are specifically geared towards political speech or campaign signs, it is arguably content-related regulation, depending on how it's done. But if you're focusing on just that, you're addressing the content, and that is the content that addresses a campaign issue or a measure issue that's on the ballot. And what the Supreme Court said in 2015 in Reed versus the town of Gilbert, Arizona, was that when you get into that content type of regulation of free speech, that it's subject to the highest standard that the Supreme Court used, and that's strict scrutiny. And that means that there has to be a narrowly tailored ordinance that is drafted to address a compelling interest of the government. And so that's the highest standard of review that our courts utilize in determining whether an ordinance is constitutional or not. And just to give you some other sort of parameters that we have to work within when we're dealing with this type of regulation, and I give this to you for information only, but I think we ought to come back and do a more detailed sort of presentation on it. Cities may not limit the number of signs erected in support of or opposition to a candidate or issue, as long as size limits do not infringe on the ability to effectively exercise free speech or unjustifiably treat signs unequally to other non-commercial signage. Courts have accepted limits on the size of signs. Courts have struck down time limits relating to how far in advance of an election political signs may be posted, when such signage would be effectively banned other times of the year. And there was a 60-day pre-election time limit that was invalidated by the court, a 6-week pre-election time limit that was also invalidated, but a requirement that signs be summarily removed 10 days after an election did get upheld by the courts. And then summary, and this gets to the issue that the concern that Todd was expressing, summary pre-election removal of signs is unlawful. Absent an immediate public health or safety justification, cities must give notice to the candidate and or the sign owner and provide a reasonable opportunity to respond before agency action. So there are parameters that we have to work within, and we have to be very careful not to impinge upon people's, one of the most sacred constitutional rights that we have. So,
thank you. A couple of comments. Everybody has good arguments one way or the other, but I don't think we're ever going to come to a perfect point on signs because, you know, if you think that it favors the incumbent a certain way, then it also favors somebody who has deeper pockets than somebody else who can actually afford more for signs. And then it favors somebody who has committees behind them that they can put up signs. And so it's very difficult to make it a totally even playing field. And that doesn't discount anything anybody has said. I just feel like it's a really tough thing to try to make it so that it's a totally equal playing field. So I don't know where that leaves us with the political signs, but I actually had a question about the commercial signs, but it does cross over into the political. When I read through the commercial, so sorry to change from political, but when I read through on the commercial documentation here, we have the Welcome to Beaumont sign that has political signage on commercial signage. And when I read through it, it looked to me like at times it had exceeded the square footage that was allowed. So I would like it if somebody would weigh in on whether there is a crossover on that sign where they're doing political advertising on commercial signs and maybe above the sign size limit.
So you cannot favor commercial speech over non-commercial speech. All right, so if you say this commercial speech is permitted on this sign of this size, you can't then say that you cannot use the sign of that size to engage in political speech.
Okay, well.
And so, and this gets to the question that was being asked earlier by Councilmember Martinez, and that language is included in the ordinance and has been upheld. Those concepts have been upheld by the courts, that where you have a sign that has commercial speech on it, you can have a substitution provision in your ordinance that allows somebody to exchange that commercial speech for non-commercial speech. Because if you told the property owner or the sign owner that they can only engage in commercial speech on that sign, then you're giving that sign giving commercial speech greater constitutional protection than political speech. And political speech is more protected than commercial speech.
So if we didn't want political signs on the Welcome Beaumont or the other billboards throughout town, we'd have to say no billboards and no Welcome Beaumont at all.
Yeah, well, you couldn't allow it commercially and then prohibit.
That's what I'm saying.
Speech, yeah.
If we want to say you can't do political on there, then we're also saying you can't have those signs up, period. It's the only way we would do it, is you can't have commercial or non-commercial on those signs, is what you're telling us.
As a general rule, yes. Now, billboards are treated a little bit different, and you have a little bit more leeway in terms of regulating them. But generally, the rule is that you cannot protect commercial speech more than you protect political speech.
Okay, but if I look at page 3 of 9 or page 309 of 349, item B, where it says in commercial or industrial zones, et cetera, temporary or permanent signs displaying political or other non-commercial messages may be displayed at any time subject to. And obviously, the number of signs isn't limited, but the maximum size of any one size is 10 square feet. Am I not reading that right?
That's what our ordinance says, yeah.
And
so
then
it'd probably be a good idea to go through it and update it.
Maximum of all signs is 20 square feet. So is this like a loophole that we allow this one to do that? Because it does exceed that, right?
Well,
actually, that's doubled during campaign season. Those numbers are all doubled.
I think if there's concerns, you know, and it sounds like from the council that there are concerns about the ordinance, so why don't we just update it and bring it back to you with what we think would be constitutional, and then start getting, but this is, you know, it's not your typical ordinance because it's dealing with such a protected area, so I think we had to thoughtfully prepare something and bring it back to you and then get input from the council before we teed up for a public hearing. So maybe in the first quarter of next year, bring you a draft ordinance.
when you do that, so if it is political signage that's on a commercial, does then it have to adhere to the 10 days taken down? And if you would just clarify
Sure.
that, I would appreciate that, because when I got to hear it was a little bit ambiguous, so thank you.
I have one more question for staff. Nicole, how many permits were issued?
I don't have that number. I'd have to pull it from Public Works.
Okay.
They don't go through me. They go through Public Works.
Okay. So, do we have any more questions or comments?
I do like Ray's idea of putting up who's paid for a permit and who hasn't.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Mhm. Okay, so that's enough direction, correct? We could go on forever. So number 13, approval of city attorney invoices for the month of October 2018.
And because this involves my law firm, I'm going to recuse myself.
Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'd like to make a motion to approve the invoices in the amount of $84,386.35.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Item 14, treasurer vacancy. Direct staff to start the application process for the position of treasurer for appointment at the regular meeting of January 15, 2019.
Mayor and council, as you know, in the 2018 municipal election, there were no qualifying candidates for treasurer. So in order to fill the position, council has the option to either hold a special election or go through an appointment process. Staff recommends that you do an appointment process for cost purposes. With that, we would notice the vacancy and solicit for applications for an appointment process during the January 15th meeting. Applications would be due January 8th. I'm just looking for direction on going forth.
Thank you. Do we need discussion on this item?
I think we've been through this enough.
Okay. So I make a motion for staff to start the application process for the position of treasurer for appointment at the regular meeting of January 15th, 2019.
I'll second.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor Carroll?
Yes. Item 15, legislative updates and discussion. Do we want to skip this, or do we have anybody ready for this?
I vote we move on.
I'll second.
Okay, council reports. Councilmember White, you're already warmed up.
So there is something, and I'll be very careful, Mr. Pinckney, regarding a decision we made on Erica. Just to give you an update on that, we decided as a group of cities to.
I'm gonna step out for this.
Okay.
And that's because somebody at my firm does work for Erica.
So, and I'm going to be very careful, but I want you guys to all know this because you may have or are going to receive phone calls from the press on this. We, through a lot of discussions, a number of meetings, it was a many-month process where we went backwards and forwards. Finally, what happened was the group determined that the legal liability that we might have by allowing people in police departments who may not be properly certified to be listening to information coming from an ongoing incident, and that information also getting out to the public, like names, addresses, things like that. and I'm really summarizing this, that we decided, the 5 cities decided that we would turn off the ability for the press to follow our live communications. And so it is likely, it could lead to litigation by the press against Erica and therefore against the 5 cities. So I just want to let you know that if you do receive a phone call, you can either contact Carrie, or the best approach, I think, is to say that you have no comment, because this may become a legal issue. So I just want you to know when you get a call that if it's Desert Sun or Channel 2, they've already called me a couple times and just left voicemails. I haven't returned their calls. And then RCTC, so John can come back in. Lena is our counsel for Erica. So in RCTC, there, just want to let you know, I think we briefly talked about it regarding, well, let me jump to it. RCTC has a lot notified us all that there was a glitch, is what they're calling it, which I love it when they refer to computer problems as glitches, when it's usually user error. But there's a glitch in the sales tax collection process. They're switching over from Equalization Board doing this to a new agency, CLFTA. And at the beginning of the calendar year, they lost track of the sales taxes coming in, and therefore remitting those taxes or that revenue to both the cities as well as RCTC is in arrears, and we don't even know what the numbers are. They keep telling us we'll learn soon what the numbers are. So when RCTC is trying to close their books and budget for future years, they're dealing with an unknown. So we're working through the process of whether or not to estimate low, be conservative, estimate high. There's discussions about using reserve funds. And I bring this all up because there is some concerns by the transit operators that this may affect their revenues coming in the first part of the year in January. So I'll keep you updated on that, but right now our CTC was not in a position to commit one way or the other whether, what they were going to do and how, if it will impact pass area transit, Sunlines, and the other agencies. So just wanted to put that on your radar, and as I said, this same process will affect the city, and I'm sure we're going to get a report on that when we start talking budget. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Santos?
Last time I was with Mario and Ashley. I attended that on the retirement party he got, and that was wonderful. And seeing him, on the last month of his stay being a county supervisor, and I enjoyed that. Councilman, Lloyd and Mayor Nancy Carroll, and seeing a lot of good people over there. I really appreciate that, attending that. And also on the Finance and Audit, committee, I would like to thank, Malana on the report that we got on July and August 2018 on the financial report, and that looked really good. I mean, on that side, and I know we will get the September, October, we will get the real number. When I say real number, is the trend that the city going, and I'll see more on that probably around July. We will get a really more positive numbers on that. Good job, Milana. And I really, Sharon, I really appreciate the service provided us and everything. I hope I could stay, but it's you. I mean, and Donna also on the city clerk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Lara?
Just really quickly, the Veterans Day program was done very well. Thank you to staff that at the time there was a lot of neat ideas and a lot of new things that we did. Mayor did an excellent job, and I enjoyed that. That's all I have.
I attended the League of City Division meeting last night in Banning. I met the newly elected council members for Banning, Mr. Happy and Ms. Wallace. Got a pretty good feeling that they're really open for new communications between Beaumont and Banning, so looking forward to working with them in the future. The EDC meeting on the 14th, basically we're prepared for the information that we're going to be getting from the first economic summit that we had on the 15th. Attended the pre-grand opening for Altus, but a very nice and classy establishment that is, so we're very thankful to have that to our community. Vet ceremony was outstanding. Good job, Mayor. Good job to Ashley for decorations. Looked very classy. It was very worthy of their needs. It was very respectful. And congratulations to our returning council members. Look forward to working with you again. That's all.
Thank you. Congratulations. I extend that also.
Thank you.
Let's keep it onward and upward here. So I very much appreciate that you're all going to be back here again. We've had a lot of ribbon cuttings the last couple of weeks. Only one or two I couldn't make, but thank you very much to the Chamber of Commerce too for all your work and support on that. I went Friday night to a 50th anniversary for the Edward Dean Museum, which is behind the city of Beaumont up in Cherry Valley as you climb up the hill. And I have asked that they come to council to get their 50th anniversary proclamation, because I think it would be good for the visibility of the museum as well as the connection to the city. It's just another great cultural offering that we can tell prospective residents, that we can tell businesses that we have for quality of life to offer their employees if they open up or relocate here. So I think the more we can connect with them, the better that is. And if you haven't been to the Edward Dean Museum, you need to go. It's a real surprise. It's a wonderful little museum. So we went and did a tour of CJ Foods with their expansion on their new facilities that they're doing. They have acquired a logistics company that will be running out of that building, as well as expanding on their food offerings. They're a wonderful company, highly professional, and they're working with the city on their job fairs, which I think is great, because many of their positions are very skilled positions that offer good alternatives for our workforce here. The 26th of January, Anita Worthen would be mad at me if I did not mention that there is a job expo coming, a Vets Expo coming on the 26th. I did very much enjoy the opening of Altus. I've been there now 3 times. The cocktail reception that they had on Friday night was so professionally done. I thought that was great. I did go back on Saturday morning, and with Mike Turner, we spoke to the crowd about Altus and what it offered and what the community of Beaumont could offer to prospective residents. So I enjoyed that very much. And then I also took somebody over to look at the model homes. And so maybe I can make a sale for the city of Beaumont. So with that, I will move on to economic development update. Oh, and the vets, I did not want to overlook. The bunting looked terrific. The gymnasium was very well done. The program was excellent. Kudos to staff, Ashley, city manager, and everybody who helped make that happen.
Don't forget the MC.
There you go.
Don't forget the what?
Especially the MC.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Hey, the pay grade was really low on that one. But he did a good job, and
Yes,
I
he
very
did.
much appreciate it. I did tell him no jokes, so he did a good job. Economic development,
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll have to apologize for missing the legislative update as well. I was back there working on stuff and I missed it, so if you want, I can go over some of that stuff at the tail end of my Economic Development Committee update. So at the last Economic Development Committee, we talked about the Economic Development Summit, which was held. It was very well attended by the different stakeholders throughout the community. We're now in the process of compiling all the data in thoughts that were extrapolated from those stakeholders and putting that down on paper, which then will be sent out to all of the stakeholders for their review, as well as the Economic Development Committee members for review. And I could probably end up sending it to all of you to kind of see what some of the work product was from that summit. The next one is going to be in December, so we're looking forward to that. The next Economic Development Committee meeting is on December, I think it's the 12th. Let me just double check. Yes, December 12th. And the Economic Development Summit meeting is the very next day. So we'll be doing a little recap at the next EDC meeting on some of the stuff that came up at the summit for the committee members that didn't attend. And that's pretty much what the Economic Development Committee is working on right now, because we're waiting patiently for the strategic plan to finish to see if the goals and the vision statement needed to be amended and kind of what our work processes are going to come out of that. So I know the committee is excited to be working on it. Like I said, the summit was very well attended, and we appreciate the council support on that. Legislative update, I don't necessarily have any key items on that one. We as staff are still working on our 2019 legislative platform, and we're going to be finalizing that probably within the next couple weeks or so, and then we'll be sitting down with council to get your buy-in on what that legislative platform is, so we can hit the ground running in 2019.
thank you.
Thank you.
City treasurer report,
Nothing to report.
thank you. City clerk report,
Nothing to report.
okay, thank you. City attorney report.
Nothing to report.
Okay,
Unless you would like me to go over a recitation of First Amendment.
no, I'm okay. I hope I'm the deciding vote on that, but no, I'm okay with that. Thank you, sir. City manager report.
Can we do the 25th Amendment? Okay, at your places, you see a letter that's been drafted. After the agenda was posted, we actually received word from SCAG that they were wanting to develop community support letters for Sustainable Communities grant that they're working on through Caltrans. The whole idea of this is looking at broadband and trying to use that as a way to do environmental and economic, and using technology to try to be more efficient and more environmentally friendly. So they had a kind of a standard letter that had a few little tweaks that everybody could put into them. So I've put this together. So just present this to you. We have until tomorrow to submit this. Again, I apologize. We didn't get the notice that they were needing this until after it was too late to get on the agenda for discussion. But, as long as you don't have any heartburn with it. And if you have more interest in terms of what this program is, I can forward you some information on that if you'd like to see that. It's kind of straightforward, using virtual technology and broadband to provide technological solutions for efficiency and environmental protection and economic growth kind of stuff. So we are in the process of getting our 8E bond sale out. We should have a pre-sale meeting on those bonds next week, and looking at potential bond sale coming out pretty soon thereafter, looking at potential close at those bonds sell before the end of December. So again, that is looking about a $12 million working amount that's out there. So that's what we're looking at. So there was a endangered species spotted on Sunday. The Broncos actually won the game. So it's actually now.
It's a mid-season species.
And besides that, I wish everybody a happy holiday. Hope you don't have too much tryptophan and all sorts. Keep it really young.
Future agenda items? Anybody have any? Okay. I was kind of hoping we'd finish up by 9 o'clock, so if nobody has any future agenda items, I will adjourn the Beaumont City Council meeting for the 20th of November, 2018 at 8:55 p.m. Thank you.